All right, welcome back to Mu the Motherland podcast. I'm Robert, and as always, I'm here with Marlene. Today, we're diving into part 2 of our genealogical account of Mu and Atlantis. This time, we're really going to get into what made these civilizations tick, like their core beliefs, their spiritual philosophies, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, this is my favorite part. I mean, the stories about Mu and Atlantis are wild, but when you look at their ideologies, you start to see why people are still so fascinated. So, let's start with Mu. The big thing with Mu is this idea of harmony with the earth, right? Like everything is about living in balance, honoring the land, and, that matriarchal wisdom, elders and priestesses guiding the community.
Exactly. And then you look at Atlantis, and it's almost the opposite in some ways. Atlantis is all about cosmic cycles, spiritual hierarchy, and like this drive for technological mastery. There's this sense of, striving for ascension, but through a more structured, almost scientific approach. It's not just about being in tune with the earth, it's about understanding the universe and your place in it, sometimes through like a priest king or a spiritual elite.
Right. And you can see how those two worldviews trickled down into different traditions. Mu's influence is huge in indigenous Pacific cultures. Think about the way Polynesian societies honor their ancestors and the land. There's this deep earth consciousness, and honestly, I felt it firsthand. I remember going to a ceremony in Hawaii, and the elders there, oh my gosh, they invoked the spirits of the motherland, and it was so powerful. You could feel that legacy of Mu, even if nobody called it that. It was all about connection, respect, and this sense that the land itself is alive.
That's amazing. And then, on the flip side, Atlantis' legacy shows up in Western, esoteric schools, mystery traditions, even secret societies. There's this fascination with hierarchy, with accessing higher knowledge, and with, the idea that you can ascend spiritually through mastering certain technologies or rituals. It's a totally different vibe, but you can see how both have shaped spiritual movements today.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, none of this is, proven history. It's more about the stories and the symbolism, right? But those stories have real power. They shape how people see themselves and their place in the world.
Totally. And, even if you look at New Age stuff, you see people talking about Lemurian wisdom, crystal healing, Akashic records. All of that comes from these mythic roots. It's wild how these ancient ideas keep popping up in new forms.
So let's talk about how these societies were organized. Mu was all about consensus, right? Elders and priestesses making decisions together, kind of like a council. It feels almost utopian. Everyone has a voice, and the focus is on harmony and wisdom.
Yeah, and then you get Atlantis, which is way more hierarchical. You've got priest kings at the top, and everything is stratified. There's a clear order, and the rulers are seen as these, divine intermediaries. It's almost like a theocracy mixed with a technocracy, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that's why the mythic figures from each place are so different. In Mu, you have the Lemurian elders, these spiritual guides, who are all about passing down wisdom, especially about energy grids and the Akashic records. They're not rulers in the traditional sense, more like teachers or guardians.
And then in Atlantis, you get the priest kings and the scientist priests. They're the ones mastering crystal technology, building temples with sonic architecture, and, supposedly keeping all this secret knowledge. There's also the Akashic historians, these mystics who, according to the stories, kept metaphysical records of everything that happened. It's a little out there, but it's a cool idea.
Yeah, and if you compare that to modern spiritual organizations, you still see echoes of both models. Some groups are all about consensus and shared wisdom, while others have a clear hierarchy or a single charismatic leader. I guess the big question is, what can we learn from these mythic figures? Is it better to have a council of wise elders, or do you need a strong leader to get things done?
That's a tough one. I think both have their strengths and weaknesses. The council model feels more inclusive, but sometimes you need someone to make the hard calls. The priest-king thing can get out of hand, though. Power concentrated at the top isn't always a good thing. But maybe the real lesson is about balance, How do you combine wisdom and leadership without losing sight of the bigger picture?
Yeah, and maybe that's why these stories still resonate. They're not just about lost continents. They're about how we organize ourselves, how we pass down knowledge, and how we try to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
All right, let's get into the fun stuff. Legendary technologies and what, if anything, might be left of these civilizations. So, Mu is famous for its crystal energy grids and sound healing. The idea is that they embedded crystals in the land and in temples to conduct energy, communicate, and even amplify spiritual power. Sound healing was a big deal, too, using chants and frequencies to heal or enhance psychic abilities.
And then Atlantis takes it up a notch with advanced metallurgy, crystal power, and sonic architecture. Like they supposedly built temples that resonated at specific frequencies, maybe even used sound to levitate stones. I mean, it's all speculative, but you see echoes of this in places like Egypt, with the pyramids and the way temples are aligned to the stars.
Yeah, and Mu's influence is all over Polynesian navigation. The way Pacific Islanders used star maps and maybe even vibrational cues to travel huge distances. Some people say that's a legacy of Muan technology. And then, you look at Easter Island, with the Moai statues and the mysterious Rongorongo script. There are theories, not mainstream ones, but theories that these are remnants of Mu's crystal culture or writing systems.
And Atlantis, of course, gets credit for influencing Egyptian civilization, the Mediterranean, even the Americas. The idea is that survivors from Atlantis brought knowledge of crystal tech, sacred sound, and celestial cycles to places like Egypt, where you see it in the priesthood, the pyramids, and the mystery schools.
You know, I actually interviewed a New Age practitioner a while back who claimed to use sound-based healing techniques inspired by Lemurian traditions. She talked about tuning forks, crystal bowls, and even chanting in what she called a Proto-Pacific language. I mean, I can't say how much of it is historically accurate, but it was fascinating. She really believed she was tapping into something ancient, something that goes all the way back to Mu.
That's so cool. And it just shows how these myths keep evolving. Whether it's crystal healing, sound therapy, or sacred geometry and architecture, people are still drawing inspiration from these stories. Even if Mu and Atlantis never existed in a literal sense, their legacies are everywhere, in rituals, in art, in the way we think about lost knowledge and human potential.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good place to wrap up for today. There's so much more we could talk about. Like, we barely scratched the surface of the Akashic records or the idea of global flood myths, but we'll save that for another episode. Marlene, thanks for sharing your stories and insights, as always.
Thank you, Robert. This was a blast. And thanks to everyone listening. If you have your own stories or questions about Mu, Atlantis, or anything else, let us know. We'll be back soon with more mysteries from the motherland. Take care.
See you next time, everyone. Bye.